Speaking of the supposed conversations that took place between fired FBI Director James Comey and Donald Trump, of course, the backstory being that last week James Comey was fired by Donald Trump. The letter from Donald Trump explaining the firing references James Comey supposedly telling Donald Trump 3 times that he wasn't under investigation. This is a very bizarre thing to include in the letter. It's also apparently untrue. More on that later. Very strange tweet from Donald Trump about this entire thing on Friday, where he tweeted, quote, James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. This could be understood in 2 different ways. Number one is Donald Trump here is basically threatening James Comey for basically saying, I secretly recorded our meetings and conversations. And if James Comey is going to come out and say anything that might not be accurate about what was or wasn't said in those meetings, he had better think twice, because Donald Trump has it on tape, and that Comey had better be careful. The other interpretation would be Trump is implying that if James Comey secretly recorded FBI investigations, he'd better be careful if he's going to try to leak those recordings. Now, I would find it absolutely shocking if James Comey was the one recording a conversation in the White House. The idea that the FBI director would secretly bring in recording devices to the White House to record his meeting with the president, I have a very hard time believing that. More likely is that if there are any recordings of that meeting between James Comey and Donald Trump, that it was Trump who actually did the recording, because Trump, according to to employees of Trump's former job, which was running the Trump Organization, Donald Trump supposedly did sometimes secretly record conversations with employees. What we do know is that current and former FBI officials dispute the characterization from Donald Trump of that meeting with James Comey from earlier this year. Trump, in an interview with NBC on Thursday, said Comey requested the meeting with Trump, during which Trump asked Comey if he wanted to stay on as head of the FBI. Officials have said to NBC, no, James Comey didn't request that meeting. It was the White House that requested that meeting. That's sort of a basic factual misstatement of what the circumstances of the meeting were. And then a former senior official also said that James Comey, whether or not Trump was under investigation specifically, James Comey never would have specifically said to the president, you're not under investigation. Also, 2 people who heard of James Comey's account of the meeting told the New York Times that Donald Trump allegedly asked James Comey to pledge political loyalty to Trump. And Comey reportedly said, I promise honesty, but not loyalty, which corroborates the more general consensus about James Comey. And again, it goes back against the characterization of Trump. But although no one believes that it's Comey who might have recorded that meeting, maybe Trump did. In any case, if there are recordings of that meeting, senior House Democrats have now demanded that Donald Trump turn them over. Congressman John Conyers and Elijah Cummings, the top Democrats on the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees, wrote to White House counsel Don McGahn asking whether such tapes exist and requesting copies if they do. Congressman Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, issued a statement saying that Trump must either provide tapes to Congress or admit that he made them up. And I read that and thought, admit he made them up. Trump will admit he made up the existence of these tapes, possible existence of these tapes, if they don't exist. As soon as he admits that he made up the assertion that 3 to 5 million people voted illegally for Hillary Clinton, as soon as he admits that he made up the claim that he had record inauguration attendance, as soon as he admits that he made up the claim that Obama wiretapped him and the claim that he'll build a wall with Mexico that Mexico will pay for and that everyone will be covered under his replacement to Obamacare, I could go on. As soon as he admits that he made up all those things, maybe he would admit that he made up the possible existence of these tapes. How wacky is this, though? Because it is yet another Nixon connection. Last week, after James Comey was fired, I said, this is sort of reminiscent of the Saturday Night Live, not Saturday Night Live, the Saturday Night Massacre involving Richard Nixon and Archibald Cox in the Watergate scandal. We know how that ended. And here's yet another connection to Watergate with the tapes. In 1973, Alexander Butterfield was testifying before Congress and answered some minor question, sort of offhandedly, about checking the tapes. The question everybody had in response was, wait a second, what tapes are you talking about? That's what started the revelation that there were recordings in the Oval Office that, of course, ultimately led to a massive legal fight. Those tapes were subpoenaed and ultimately led to Richard Nixon's resignation. Things certainly don't appear to be calming down anytime soon as far as that investigation goes. Send me your thoughts about this. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. We'll take a break and be back with much more right after this. Today's program is sponsored in part by Movement Watches. Movement Watches has a history similar to the David Pakman Show in that it was started by two broke college kids that wanted stylish watches. They couldn't afford them. They would go to the big department stores, and watches they liked were $400 or $500. And they actually used crowdfunding to launch their company. They decided to sell entirely online, cut out any of the middle people, cut out the retail markup, and provide watches starting at just $95. You see a couple of the designs here if you're watching with us today. I'm wearing my Movement watch, which I love. People see it, they say, well, what is that watch? That's really cool. I like that. And they've now sold over 500,000 watches in over 160 countries. You can step up your watch game and get 15% off plus free shipping and free returns by going to mvmtwatches.com/PAKMAN. Okay, that's 15% off, free shipping, free returns, mvmtwatches.com/PAKMAN.